Welcome to Mystically Curious, a podcast for those curious about the mysterious, mundane, and stuff that's just a little bit weird. You may call me Grimm.
You may call me K.
And today, we'll be talking all about Kay's practice, how she got to where she is, and then we're going to be diving more into the actual details of her practice.
I'm excited to share, but
I'm
also
excited to learn.
I'm a little nervous.
It's okay, we'll just re-record it if it's trash.
It's fine. All right, so I touched on this a little bit in the last episode, but just to recap, when I was like 13, 14, 15, I was interested in like Celtic polytheism, but I didn't really know what that was, and I didn't know how to do real research.
I wonder if there's like a scientific reason for why it seems like more people start branching out when they like start hitting puberty.
Yeah, I think it's just I started asking questions about my own religion.
It's a big no-no in a lot of religions, especially Baptist.
Especially Baptist. And I also was living in a rural area. We'd moved to a more rural area. So I was feeling more in tune with the land or whatever. It was very like nature-y. So I think that's a part of the reason why I was drawn also specifically to polytheism and specifically to Fae as well, because I mentioned also in the last episode that I was interested in what I think now actually were like the genius loci of the place where I was living, not actually like the Fae, because I don't know if that's even like a thing that we have here in America. You know what I mean?
Oh, I 100% think that we have the Fae in America.
I haven't done enough research on it. Obviously, I didn't do much research when I was actually working with them or not working with them. And honestly, it's probably a good thing that I didn't ever actually like make contact with one.
Probably. It leaves you a little touched. Well, because like not to derail it too much, but like my thing with the Fae is I really believe that every culture's kind of got it right with like their own definitions of like their own types of Fae. When I say the Fae, I'm thinking more specifically of the traditionally Celtic Fae and a little bit of like the traditionally like Norse Fae.
And I think that's what I was trying to get at. I wasn't stupid. I wasn't super ignorant.
Well, the Celtic Fae are the ones that scare me. And
yeah.
Why I 100% believe that we have them in North America, because part of why they are so terrifying is their ability to adapt to humans.
Yeah, actually, in hindsight, I'm sure there probably were some that were inadvertently brought over by, Celtic immigrants to the country.
100%. In another episode, we'll talk about why I may be a changeling child.
Ooh, yeah. So as I got older, around, like 15, 16, I did do more legitimate research. I bought a book by W.B. Yeats about Celtic folklore and mythology, and I read it, and, that was good, but I probably could have delved a little deeper than I actually did, and I ended up losing interest in the practice because I wasn't actually practicing and I wasn't actually studying. I was just not putting in the effort that was needed on either the practice or the study side.
Yeah. Did you find it easier to research paths that weren't your own after you solidified your own path? Because, like, when I was looking for paths, for me specifically, like, it was really hard to research them past the point where I was like, this is not for me. And then once I discovered heathenry, it became a lot easier to be like, okay, I'm just going to learn about this other path. I don't need to see if it fits me.
Yeah, to an extent, I think that reason for that, though, is twofold, because I'm older and more mature now than I was when I was
very true.
A young teenager, and I know how to research better. I know how to actually, like, find good books and read them in a critical way instead of just like, oh, I don't like this, so I'm going to stop reading it or whatever.
Yeah. What's that hot button everybody likes to say in college? critical thinking.
Critical thinking. I feel like I've improved my ability to think critically.
Not because of college, just because of age. College doesn't teach you that shit.
Yeah, I agree. So we've talked about my past and my attempts at being witchy and how they did not go well, and that's probably for the best, because if they did go well, I would probably be in trouble. But a turn of events came when I was around 19. As I said previously, also, I started learning more about the occult. I found some people who were actually practicing ceremonial magic, which I'd never heard of before, and it immediately clicked for me. I really liked the structure, which I feel is very lacking in the religion I was raised in.
Mm-hmm. Can you break down to like the bare bones what ceremonial magic is, what it entails?
Yeah, we can actually kind of like flip around and talk about what that is first. So ceremonial magic is characterized by, as you've said before, a lot of rules.
She fancy.
Yes, it's a lot of rules. It draws a lot from grimoires from the Middle Ages. The 14th to like 17th century is really where a lot of the inspiration and core of the practice comes from. So a lot of these grimoires involve special tools, usually before you actually perform a ritual or ceremony, periods of fasting or ritual purity. And Theo can attest, I do fast on the regular.
Like spiritual cleansings.
Yeah, spiritual cleansings.
That are not appropriated.
Yeah. And they do involve, like, the quote-unquote cleansing of the body is cleansing of the spirit to an extent.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of encouraging this purity. They have lots of special prayers. There are, usually it's over a period of days that you have to do these things. So I think 9 days is a pretty common length of time. You're supposed to, like, not eat excessively, or some people eat vegan for 9 days prior to a big, ritual or something.
And we will probably have an episode about diets and things like that and how they relate to certain practices later on.
That'd be cool, yeah. We both know someone who is Jane, who talks about fasting a lot.
Oh, yes.
But
maybe we'll get them on here.
Maybe so. I don't know. We'll have to ask him. But that being said, yeah, it draws a lot from the grimoires. It's also influenced, like, modern practice is influenced by lodge magicians from, like, the Order of the Golden Dawn and Freemasonry and other quote-unquote fraternal orders from, like, the last century and the century before that were these secret societies where it was a bunch of dudes who wanted to get away from their wives for a weekend.
Sausage fest.
Yeah. And I mean, some
like
of them,
ancient strip clubs.
Yeah, or some modern strip clubs, I guess. I don't know.
Can we start an arcane strip club?
I love that.
An arcane queer strip club.
Yes.
Nobody steal our idea, please.
That's basically Oddfellows.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
I haven't been.
Neither have I, but from what I've heard. Anyway,
Sure,
so well, we may cut that. I don't know. Whatever. So these lodge orders were also very highly structured, and they drew also on rituals from the grimoires, and they had like initiation ceremonies and that sort of thing that I know some people who actually do follow the initiation ceremonies that were written back then, but they just do them themselves, by themselves. There's instructions for solo initiations. Yeah. And they're also...
That's a big no-no in some practices.
Yeah, but these are like... It's different. I don't know.
No, well, they're all different. It's just cool to, like, note the differences.
Yeah, for sure. And for better or for worse, I would be remiss not to mention Aleister Crowley in all of this, because...
Or Crowley, if you watch modern TV.
Well, I've been told it rhymes with holy.
Yeah, I just feel like because of, like, supernatural and stuff, people see that word and they read it as Crowley, so they might not recognize who you're talking about with the different pronunciation.
Yeah. Crowley or Crowley or...
Yeah.
Those are the only two I've heard. There's probably others.
A very controversial figure.
Very controversial.
But a bi-icon.
yes, I have nothing to add to the mountains of both good and bad commentary.
We'll link a few different ways to learn more about him. I know at least one podcast episode, they do a fantastic job of really diving into like the private lives of Aleister Crowley,
Which were messed
wild
up and wild. Regardless of
anywhere
what
outside of a sex dungeon, this life should not be happening.
Very sexy. Very sexy.
Depending on what side you're on of the equation.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
I'm very, very critical of him and his system, but I will also be transparent and say that his work does influence my own, and I use some of his methods because I find they work for me.
well,
I'm like shrugging.
no, I also I feel like a lot of cultures deal with that. My own, with heathenry, a lot of it was started by very, very racist and bigoted people. There's honestly no way to...
And Crowley was super racist.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Aggressively so.
Unfortunately for, like, my path, there's no way to completely separate from those roots. Those are the roots. There's no alternative. There's no, like, well, there was this one person who started it in a good way. Like, it started off like shit. And then as it expanded, we've been pushing to separate and not bury those roots because they're important to acknowledge, but to improve upon them and to eradicate those problems to kind of just do better.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I know people who specifically do not use any of the methods that he used, or
Which good for them, but like,
I mean, yeah, if they feel called to do that, then they can do that. I don't necessarily feel called to like
completely separate.
Yeah, completely separate, because I mean, I encourage people who've never read anything he's written to read something, at least
with the knowledge.
Read critically is what I am encouraging.
That he and his personal beliefs were hugely problematic, but that does not inherently discredit the
I would say some of them are problematic,
information.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, but that doesn't necessarily discredit all of the information that he has given us in the world. It just means we need to pick out which of that information is
useful or
useful
good.
And valuable, and then what of it is rooted in that bigotry, which obviously we don't want to carry forth anything that was like completely rooted in bigotry. We want to find alternative methods and better methods.
Yeah, for sure.
So back on your path,
yeah,
away from Crowley.
Well, I mean, my path does include some of his work.
Yeah. So back to Crowley.
Because I do know some people who just work from the grimoires.
Mm-hmm.
And like that's it, and that's all they do, and that's awesome, but that's a little too intense for me because it's a lot and it's very involved. But I do have like a daily practice. Should I talk about like what I do on the regular? Yeah, so my daily practice is pretty aggressive, and some days some days I keep up with it better than others, and some days I'm like, oh my god, I'm so tired, I need a break. But on a good day, I wake up in the morning and I perform a ritual called the Lesser Invoking Ritual of the Pentagram.
Ooh.
Have you ever heard of this?
No.
Or the Lesser Banishing Ritual is the more popular cousin.
Honestly, I know very little about your path.
Okay. So
normally when people say ceremonial magic, don't come at me, but I think of like asshole wizards.
Oh yeah.
And like warlocks who are like, you must be a man and you must be a cis man, and look at my wand, I'm going to swing around like a makeshift penis.
So you imagine Aleister Crowley?
Exactly. I mean, like, I know that that's not your practice because I have more faith in you as a human being, but like that's just kind of always the image, is the like schmancy robes with
I
like
have a
embroidery.
robe, but it's like
and like
not a schmancy one, but it
yeah,
is.
but like,
I do have a robe.
I feel like a lot of the details of what I'm picturing are correct, but the attitude of what I'm picturing is very different.
Yeah, a lot of the grimoires encourage like you have to be humble and compassionate. Ooh. And like, because a part of the...
Okay, so wizards are out. My bad.
Yeah, a part of the purity aspect is both a spiritual purity, which I interpret more as like be nice to people. Mm-hmm. So anyway, that being said, the lesser ritual of the pentagram is very similar to casting a circle.
Okay.
So it's basically like invoking the 4 cardinal points. It's specifically invoking the archangels of the 4 points. They're elemental pentagrams, and they just purify myself and my space.
Can you name those archangels?
Yeah, I use the Hebrew pronunciation because they prefer that. But so it's Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel.
Okay.
So those are like the main ones that you invoke, and then you also call upon them to banish. And I do that at night.
Okay.
For like my bedtime routine.
Okay. So
I also know some people who perform this with, they just insert their own gods' names.
Yeah. Heathens do something similar, which we'll talk about in my episode.
And I know others who just say like the powers of water and fire.
Yeah, call in the elements.
And, yeah.
Which, what do you do for the 5th point? Because normally with the elements, people will call it like spirit, magic. What do you do for yours?
So you visualize or draw the pentagram to the north. Wait, oh my god. I'm so like directionally challenged, which makes this very difficult. You do the east.
Have a compass. It'll help.
Yes, to the east, the south, the west, and the north. And then it's a hexagram above and below.
Oh.
And then you're in the middle. So if we're really getting into the cosmology of it.
Oh, that's right, because like Crowley was really big into the as above, so below thing too, huh?
Well, so was Levi.
Yeah,
who inspired
it was
Crowley,
fairly popular.
Eliphas Levi, yeah. Because that goes all the way back.
Did you see that movie?
No.
Oh, that was a good movie.
That as above, so below thing goes all the way back to the Emerald Tablets. Because I wasn't going to get into the Emerald Tablets, because that's more of a Hermetic thing, and I know the Golden Dawn was the Hermetic order of the Golden Dawn, but I don't have as big of a focus.
For another episode.
Yeah, I don't have as big of a focus on Hermeticism personally, but I know some people who are super into Hermeticism and like the philosophy side of stuff.
Any of them want to come talk on the podcast?
I don't know, maybe. So the lesser rituals of the pentagram are very, I guess, good standby, a good, very frequent. I try to do at least banish every day because it's...
Banish what? Energy, spirits?
Yes. So here's a hot take. Even though it's a banishing ritual, it's really a conjuration.
Okay.
Of the angels who everything snaps into place when they show up. So all of the loosey-goosey energy or whatever, everything is like immediately cleaned up all at once. Yeah.
Okay. So like a clean slate.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So that's what I try to do daily, if possible. I also meditate for like 10 minutes a day, usually right after I perform that. I also there's a sun prayer that Crowley wrote that I really enjoy doing. I do it 4 times a day.
Wow.
When I wake up in the morning, at noon, at sunset, and then before I go to bed.
So, interesting idea for another podcast. Maybe we should switch routines.
Oh God.
I mean, it's easy. It's way easier for you.
Yeah, so it's the reason why I do that sun prayer is because it's supposed to keep you kind of tuned in and constantly
conscious.
Constantly conscious and like disciplined and focused on doing the work.
Okay.
So that's why I do that, and I don't know of any other like better prayer for it, and I really enjoy it because it's also elemental. So like the morning one, I face to the east and it's an air prayer, and then the noon is south and it's for fire, and then sundown is west for water, and then north is It's supposed to be for midnight. I'm not going to stay up till midnight to do this. I'm going to say it before I go to bed, whenever that is.
Okay.
It's for Earth, so it's very grounding for the end of my day.
Mm-hmm. Regarding the angels,
Yes.
is it accurate to just call them angels, or do I need to specify?
You can just say angels.
Do you said that you do the ritual in the morning and at night to kind of call them into your space. Do you ever kind of experience them without deliberately inviting them?
Yes. You said you were being stalked by Loki for a second. Fire spirits always do, or is Loki fire?
So,
or is that okay, that's a whole thing.
We'll get into that later. Kind of.
Okay. I had a period of time where Mikael was like on me, and I'm like, please, can I relax? And he was like, no.
Okay,
but it's partially my fault because I was doing a novena, which is a Catholic practice.
Oh.
For Michael. There's a lot of weird crossover between like folk Catholicism and ceremonial magic.
Mm-hmm. I would say Catholicism in general is very ceremonial.
Oh yeah. There's a lot of the grimoires were very inspired by the Catholic liturgy. So a lot of the prayers are just taken straight from
which is
the
ironic.
Prayer books. Oh yeah. They were like super heretical.
All right. So cool.
Yeah, so I do that as a daily practice for the extra rituals, because if you stay ready, you don't gotta get ready. Mm-hmm. You know, especially with the Pentagram ritual, you're basically staying buddy-buddy with the angels that are then going to help you out when you're using these other grimoires and you're asking them to do little favors for you. Then they know who you are and they'll pull through more likely than if you're some like random person.
Okay, so like building kind of a relationship.
It's a very devotional relationship, yeah.
Okay. Heathenry has something similar, but it's more defined with like gift giving. Once you give someone a gift, they are then indebted to you.
Which is why you don't give fake gifts.
You don't give fake gifts, but they are then called upon to return a gift of greater value. And the value is not decided by the giver, by the receiver.
Okay.
Which is convenient in modern times when you can't just go around giving axe heads to everyone that you want to become indebted to you. You can give someone a ride if they don't have a car, or you can let someone from out of town crash on your couch. But there's a similar principle when you are trying to work with the gods, because you give them your devotion, you give them sacrifices or worship and things like that. And in return, I don't want to say that they're indebted to you. Please, any gods listening, do not think that that's what I'm saying. But it's that same kind of idea where it's kind of like tit for tat, reciprocity.
Yeah, I mean, like, you can perform some of these rituals without having ever, like, introduced yourself.
That's just rude.
But that's just rude, yeah. I mean, it's
Be
just
polite to the gods and spiritual beings.
Yeah, exactly. So as far as, like, those other extra rituals that I do, I'm a big fan specifically of the Key of Solomon. It's a pretty popular grimoire from, like, the 14th, 15th century.
Yeah, we'll come at you with more on that later for sure.
Oh, okay. Well, there's two Keys of Solomon. There's the regular Key of Solomon, and there's the lesser Key of Solomon, which is the more infamous one that contains the Ars Goetia, the Ars Paulina, which I've also worked from.
I think we could do a whole episode on the two of those together.
Oh, I could do episodes on, like, all these grimoires.
Yeah, well, Sacred Texts, I think, would be a cool series for us to run.
Oh, for sure. So I primarily use the Key of Solomon to create pentacles that are blessed by what Agrippa called the intelligences of the planets. So,
do you consider Pluto a planet?
No. I work in...
That's it. Podcast over.
Oh my god. Well, no, like, in my heart, the answer is yes. But in, like, this system, because it's older, we just do the 7, like, traditional planets.
Okay, so you still stick with...
So, like, the sun is a planet in this, and the moon is a planet.
I can think of a way to say this, but it's not meant to be, like, rude. But so you don't, like, update with scientific discoveries?
No.
Okay.
So I think the planets are more a system of classification under the archetypes.
Okay.
Unless, so it's, I'm not asking the literal planet Saturn in the sky to protect me in my house. Maybe I should, but
you don't.
But I don't.
Walking around here unprotected by Saturn.
Yeah. But Saturn archetypically stands for or can provide protection. It's more the archetype Saturn, but in spite of that, it's still best to wait until Saturn is positively aspected, which is where the planetary stuff comes in, because also Agrippa, who I mentioned earlier, do you know who Agrippa was?
No, I don't.
So Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa, he was a astronomer and...
So the first two names sound familiar.
Yes, Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa is the full name, which it's so fun to say the full name.
Unless you're him, I bet.
Well, yeah. But so he was a medieval philosopher. He wrote the 3 books of occult philosophy, which are basically a very useful encyclopedia of correspondences and different methods that you can use to do magic. So he set out a system of planetary hours, saying that each day is ruled by a certain planet, and each hour in that day was then ruled by a planet, like within that.
Oh, okay, so that's where some of that detailing comes from.
Yeah, so we know Monday is for the moon, right? Is this a
Monday? Your experiences are not universal.
So it's Sunday is the sun, Monday's the moon, Tuesday's Mars, Wednesday's Mercury, which Mercury and Odin are kind of similar figures, or are considered to be similar figures.
A common belief is that the names for the days of the week come from Old Norse.
Yeah.
Thursday, Thursday, I think...
Jupiter.
I think Wednesday was Woden, Odin.
Friday for Frigg, or Venus.
Friday for Freyr.
Freyr, sorry.
Well, I think maybe some people consider Frigg, but I've heard it more frequently Freyr. An interesting one that I actually just saw for the first time, and I've not done any research to confirm this, but Saturday is for Loki. Because that was considered a fire day. And that's going back to, traditionally he's not a fire god, but we've made him into that.
Why not?
Because UPG, or unverified personal gnosis.
Love to do a whole episode.
Yeah, it's going to be all over my episode.
Okay.
But we can do a whole episode specifically on, like, how to verify yours, what it means and all that. But, like, Loki in particular
really briefly for listeners who aren't aware, UPG is...
UPG is when you experience something relating to your gods, your spirits, your deities, whatever, is kind of like the higher power. Or honestly, not even that. It can go down to just, like, small things like your meetings for different plants and whatnot, but it's a belief or an association that is not backed by historical evidence.
Or not necessarily backed by historical evidence, because I know of people who they have a PG or a personal gnosis, and then they're like, okay, I need to go do some research on this, and then find out that it's legit.
Verified, yeah. So, it's canon.
Yeah, exactly. Literally, it is canon.
And for the best example I have of this real quick is Loki being a fire god. We have no evidence to ever say that he was ever associated with a fire god. But when there was this resurgence of heathenry and worship of Loki in particular, most of his followers had the UPG that he was associated with fire. There are multitudes of reasons, because most people see him with red hair, because there are a lot of parallels between him and Prometheus. And then, just so many different reasons why an entire community was like, yes, Loki equals fire, even though we have no backing. And because the entire community was like, yes, Loki equals fire, it moved from unverified personal gnosis into verified personal gnosis. And that area gets a little bit more hazy, but generally you need your entire community to agree.
I would love to talk about also if believers can have an impact on a god or a spirit.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. Good talk.
Yeah, we can talk about that. But, oh yeah.
Agree.
100%. But anyways.
I'd love to have a whole episode on egregores as well, which is a kind of chaos magic-y concept that
chaos magic.
Because even though I mainly do ceremonial magic, I will also get my hands dirty and other stuff.
Okay.
But
we'll bring you that down and dirty podcast another day.
So yeah, I talked about doing the Key of Solomon. I primarily use it to make the pinnacles that are blessed by the intelligences. We were talking about the planetary days and hours.
Oh yeah. Because what I was saying though when I was bringing up the Norse gods is it'd be interesting to sit down sometime and see if all of the correspondences with your planets and the days match up with, like, you know, Thor being traditionally the god of thunder and like that energy, and to see if it, like, it's even kind of across the board.
Yeah.
So project for another day.
For another day. Yeah, so Saturn being Saturday, and then the first hour, which is sunrise of those days. The days work from sunrise that day until sunrise of the next day.
Okay, so it includes the night.
Yeah.
Okay.
So 3 a.m. on what's technically a Friday morning is still
part of
3 a.m. Thursday. It's the day of Jupiter.
Okay.
So the first hour of the day is ruled by the planet of the day. So sunrise on a Thursday is the hour of Jupiter. And then the hour after sunrise, they're not exact hours. It's a very complicated astrological process. And I'm really glad I have a website that I can use to calculate this stuff for me, because it's really confusing to do by hand.
We'll post that link in the show notes too.
Yes.
And have another episode about tools and resources and apps and whatnot to use.
Yeah, I feel like I'm getting really into the, like, nitty gritty of this stuff. I don't know if I need to explain all, like, how planetary hours work, but
we could probably do a whole other episode on that.
Oh yeah, so it's less complicated now than it was. It's easier now than ever to be a ceremonial practitioner if you want to be. So
invest in a good alarm clock.
Invest in an alarm clock, because you'll be up at all hours of the night. So I primarily, you know, make the pinnacles, which also include, you know, a lot of prayers and reading psalms and that sort of thing. I've also done work from the 17th century Lesser Key of Solomon, which includes the Ars Goetia and the Ars Paulina. The Goetia is relatively popular. A lot of people jump right into it, but that's the one where you're, like, summoning demons from hell. And
where else would you summon them from?
I don't know.
Also, how rude is it to just, like, summon? Like, you can't put in a polite request for an audience. You have to be like, here, now.
There's some
Fuck
people...
what you're doing. Drop it.
Yeah, there's some people who consider, like, especially if you're calling up someone really important, like, some people know King Paimon, who was featured in Hereditary. There's some people who think that you're really just calling up Paimon's secretary. Paimon is too busy to talk to you, you random dude in a basement.
See, I go the extra mile. I send thank you cards for calling.
Some people do send thank you cards in that it's a shot of whiskey.
Okay, fair.
Yeah.
I don't actually summon demons, for the record. Not yet, anyways.
Yeah.
We'll see about that later.
I made an attempt. I don't know if I was totally successful. I'm going to assume I wasn't, but I also kept my pact, so.
Okay. We talked about my thing, right?
What's your thing?
My demon attachment thingy.
We have not talked about your demon attachment thingy. I'd love to.
Another time.
So there's that in the Ars Paulina, which is also in the same grimoire, but it's summoning angels of that, as well as another grimoire called the Arbitel and another called Drawing Spirits into Crystals. It's a lot of conjuration and summoning and asking things to do other things for you. But I find myself returning to the greater Key of Solomon the most. Mm-hmm. So that's pretty much what I do. And we'll get into this in Witchcraft 101 a little bit, but I don't really consider myself a witch. I, practice magic and divination. I do, like, tarot readings and other types of divination, and
I think practitioner might be a better word.
I like the word occultist.
Okay, occultist too.
Or mage. I know a lot of people who say magician, but because of the city we live in,
yeah, that's very true.
Magician is very, like, it just seems kind of silly, even though it came first.
Yes, this is true. There's also all that controversy over magic with a K and
oh yeah,
Crowley's involvement in that whole shenanigan.
Yeah, I mean, I think
just like his dick, he wanted to put his opinion everywhere.
I think Eliphas Levi used magic with a K, or like revived magic with a K first, and then because Crowley was so inspired by Levi.
Yeah, but Crowley really pushed it and was like, magic without a K is tricks, parlor tricks.
I don't know if he said that.
Well, not that exactly, but that was from the research that I've done, what a lot of his followers walked away with.
Okay, yeah.
It was the impact he had.
Yeah, which is honestly probably more important. Well, I don't know if it's more important, but I think it should be considered.
I think impacts of actions are far more important in most cases, because we can sit here and analyze Crowley's problems all day long.
Oh yeah, we could.
But
we could have.
More importantly, more relevantly, is the impacts that's had on our current society.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Because, yeah.
Agreed. Okay.
Agree. So that's a 40-minute or so rundown on ceremonial magic. And I don't know if I did a good job, but hopefully I barely like scratched the surface. But do we have any other pressing questions?
Do you, like, for the early mornings, do you like drink caffeine, or
I usually do it right out of bed.
Right out of bed.
Because if I get up and then drink caffeine, then I will stay downstairs and drink my coffee and then like not do my other stuff. Yeah.
But it's not like because the caffeine makes you unclean or anything like that?
Nah. I've smoked and practiced before. Like after, and I really enjoy meditating.
Smoked cannabis.
Yes.
For the record.
Yes.
There's a lot of things that we could smoke. We should clarify.
Yeah.
Cannabis.
Yeah. And practice before. And I don't like.
For the record, we also live in a recreational state.
And are both of age.
We are both above 21, so it is completely legal for us to partake.
I love that. Anyway. Yeah, no, I mean, I've done that before, and I didn't find it better or worse. I enjoy, like, yoga and meditating, but I didn't find, like, my rituals particularly enhanced by it. So
okay.
I prefer to, I don't know, maybe I should try again.
Well,
we'll see.
I'll always encourage that.
The silence. I'm going to leave that big gap.
Because I don't do that many rituals, because it's, I don't want to say harder, but it is difficult to find, first off, authentic rituals, and then second off, rituals that do not deliberately exclude Loki in particular, but quite often his children as well.
Yeah.
I don't think that smoking cannabis allowed me to connect better. I don't know that I would say that it enhanced anything for me.
Yeah.
It just cleared pathways. I was able to feel more connected to both myself and to the things that I was trying to do.
Yeah.
So, interesting. Maybe we'll...
Because I also know...
do some science experimentation.
Yeah, maybe so. But I haven't done anything more intense than just the lesser rituals. And they're called the lesser. Because there's a greater ritual of the Pentagram that I don't do on the regular because it's a lot.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Maybe I'm just not doing enough.
Anything else you want to talk about?
I think that's good. Do you have a clearer picture a little bit about what
I think I really do.
Cool. Cool. I always feel weird talking about working with angels because I feel like I'm a mom at a farmer's market with like my Stevie Nicks skirt and I'm like, I'm blessed by angels. And I'm like, I'm not. It's not that. It's
not like you're also obsessed with herbs and crystals and tarot.
But again, not like in a mom at a farmer's market way.
She just looks like a mom at a farmer's market. Okay. On that note, we should probably call this good.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Mystically Curious podcast. We are always excited to hear from listeners, so if you have any comments, questions, or feedback about the episode, please contact us at mysticallycurious@gmail.com. You can also message us or comment on our social media, which is at the MC Pod across all platforms. If you want to help expand our community, please consider reviewing us on iTunes. Once again, thank you for listening, and we look forward to continuing our journey with you.